Okay, hopefully this turns out well. I'm going to try to tell you what we did in class today. So first, I asked if there were any questions about the program, and we answered some questions about it and talked about it in class. One question was about, someone saying that they didn't know how to pass a 2D array as a parameter into a function, and I wrote an example program that did that, and then I posted the link in D2L. So you should have that available in D2L if you need it. We did not do this, find the errors. We might do that on Thursday after the code presentations. I also just kind of talked about what this is, but I told the students that I won't have you guys do that in CS2, just sort of because we've run out of time. So what this says is you can write a class with a whole bunch of different functions, and some of the functions are really long. Like sometimes you have a big class with a lot of data and a lot of functions, and it doesn't make sense to put all of that up at the top of your program. It gets really messy. And so you can actually you can separate them out. And so you can write a class that is its own file, and like the whole entire file, all it is just everything that you need for your class. And then you can write like a different function that has like a different file that has your main method in it that can actually use the class and create objects from it and stuff like that. So we're not going to do that in CS2. I want you to be aware that it exists, and you will absolutely do it if you take OOP. So just kind of know about that. The main thing that we did today is we wrote getter and setter functions. I went through and like showed examples of coding that, and we reviewed for the quiz. That was like the main thing we did today, was review for the quiz. So we spent a lot of time today on vocab, and I want to show you these vocab words really quickly. So an abstract data type, abstract, an abstraction is when you know how something works without knowing all of the details, like without necessarily knowing how it's implemented. So I use the example in class of like driving a car. I know how to turn on my keys and make the car work, so I can use the car without having to know like how the engine works, right? I don't have to understand like how all of it was created to be able to use it. And so an abstract data type is a programmer defined data type like a struct or a class. That's what we've been doing these 2 weeks. Okay, member variables and member functions. So I mostly put this on the board today. And so I have an example here where I wrote down what I had on the board. And I'll send you a picture of this so it'll be easier for you to see. So your member variables, hopefully this makes sense, but your member variables are all of your variables. Haha, it's rocket science, right? Your member variables are all of the variables that you have in your class. And remember that we put them up here in the private section. Okay, your member functions are all of the functions that you have, all of the functions that you have inside your program. And those usually go in public, but they don't have to. You can write private functions. It just means that those functions are only accessible inside the class, right? Because private means that you can only see it inside the class. So these would be any functions you have would be your member functions. So hopefully those are kind of self-explanatory because they are, what their names are. An object, the next one here is object, constructor, and default constructor. An object is when you actually create something of the class type. So like here in the main method, right? Student was my class. Student was my class, so that's going to be my data type. So down here, when I actually create something of type student, that is the object. The object is when I actually create something. Hang on, Connor. I need you to go on, baby. I'm making a video. Okay, the constructor This is the constructor. You make a constructor because it has the same name as the class. A constructor has the same name as the class, and it's always public. And the constructor is what actually like creates the object. It's how you allocate memory for it. Okay, so it has the same name as the class, and you can have more than one constructor. So this constructor says, okay, I'm going to create a student, and they're going to give me a string. Like this is being passed into this, like it's a parameter for a function. And whatever string they pass into me, that's the name, right? My student has a name. And if someone creates a new student and they pass in a string, that string is the name. I want to take what they passed in and save it to the member variable name. This is a constructor, and this is a default constructor. And a default constructor says, what do you want to happen? What do you want me to create? What do you want me to set the name to if they don't pass in any information? If they make a student, but they don't give me a variable, this is the default value that I want you to set it to, right? So the default constructor is like if they don't tell you what to do, what's your default setting? So you are allowed to have more than one constructor, just like you're allowed to have more than one function with the same name, as long as they have different parameters. So that's kind of how the computer would differentiate between which one it's supposed to call. It would be based on like what you passed into it, right? That's called overloading. Okay, so we've talked about these early ones here. What is a destructor? So a constructor is where you reserve memory. A destructor is where you delete it. So a constructor makes an object and a destructor deletes it. So it frees the memory back out, like releases it into the wild. And you make a destructor very similar to how you make a constructor, but you put this little squiggle tilde in front of it. So like this is the symbol that makes it a destructor. And we use a destructor to delete an object, right? An instance of a class. So this created it, and I would use the tilde to delete it. Okay? Encapsulation is the idea that in a class, we have all the data and all the functions, and it's all like bundled up together. So I told the kids in class today, like it says capsule, you know, you can think of like a capsule, like a pill. It has all the things inside of it that it needs. And then if you think of like those liquid cap, like gel pills, you know, it took all those ingredients and then it wrapped it all up, it bundled it all up in like a capsule. So the fact that you have all of your variables and all of your functions, and it's all sort of like bundled together in one object, in one class, that is encapsulation. Okay, the idea that everything in a class is bundled up together and then it's just sort of handed to you and it all, you know, works. You have everything in there that you need. Data hiding is the idea that your data is private, right? And you cannot directly access data in a class. That's why we have to use those getter and setter functions. The access specifiers, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like hold the phone to record and do this like one-handed. So an access specifier are these guys. Private, public, those are your access specifiers. So I'll put that here. Access specifiers. And if you think about it, it makes sense because those things are specifying what sort of access you have. Is it private? That means it's hidden and I cannot access it outside of the class. Or is it public? That means these things are viewable by anyone, by anything. Okay? So private, public, protected, they specify who can access something. We talked about accessor functions and mutator functions. Those are the kind of like proper way to say getter and setter methods. And again, that makes sense. If you are accessing data, all you're doing is getting the data. So that is a function like this one, okay? It is a function inside the class. And all that it does is just send you back the data. So if I want to be able to get this name, but I can't get name down here in the main menu because name is private, I have to have a function that returns the value that's stored in the name, right? This function is public. So I can call this down in the main method and it will return the name value. So this is a getter, right? And it's just kind of customary to like use the word get and then whatever data you're trying to get. So this is all this function does is it says take what is stored in name, return it so that that data is accessible outside of my class. Likewise, we also want to be able to set the data. We want to be able to change that private data that's inside of our class. What if you get married and your name changes, right? Then I can call set name and I can pass in a new string and whatever new value that I'm trying to give you, store that in my variable name. Okay? This video is already getting kind of long, so I can explain inline functions to you another day. That's kind of a concept that isn't like super duper important. Overloading, I've already mentioned. That's the idea. We talked about overloaded constructors. The idea that you can have more than one function with the same name. They just need to accept different parameters. And a struct is where you can bundle multiple pieces of data together into one, thing. We've used our structs in our programs. Okay? So we went over all of that. I wrote this on the board. We talked about the vocab, and then we played a Kahoot game together as a class. And you can find that game in D2L because I posted a link to it. So if you go to like today's folder, today is Tuesday, September 7th. I put a link to that Kahoot game and you can go in and study it if you want to. And then at the end of the class, we looked at this study material, okay? So what I would like you to do, or what I would suggest maybe, is just kind of look through this and see if you think you would be able to answer these questions, just kind of based off of like watching this video and maybe playing that Kahoot game to practice or whatever. See if you would be able to answer these questions. And then if you have any questions about them, please email me, or we can do like a video call or something and get you caught up. And then the other thing that we looked at, I told them that this I would not ask as a quiz. I would not give this to you as a quiz question, but I told them that it is an excellent test question. And hint, hint, wink, wink, I think this is a very good question to ask on a midterm, where I would ask you to write a class definition. Give it 4 variables. Make a constructor. Give it an accessor function. I might not give you something quite as like detailed as this, but I would absolutely give you a test question where I asked you to make a class, give it 2 or 3 pieces of data, write a constructor for it, and give me these like setter and getter methods, right? So if you feel comfortable with that, then you are good and you are caught up. And if you want to maybe practice it some more, email me and we can schedule like a video call or something. Or you can come to my office hours, after you're feeling better. So hopefully this kind of wraps up everything that we did in class, and you can let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.